You're right, Joe.
Yes, I am. I'm very well, thank you. I'm a bit nervous about what you're going to ask me, to be honest.
Oh, Lord, right. Yes, well, I'll try not to be too demanding. Knowing you, and I know how important family is to you, and I sort of also know that family played quite a big part in the very beginning of your sort of musical journey, but I wondered if you might just tell us about that.
It's well, I was hearing great music from, I'm sure, even before I was born. My dad was a fantastic guitar player, but I think more than that, he just had an incredible concept of music. And again, I apologise, people who've heard me say this a million times, but he was just so amazing in terms of how he talked about music and all different kinds of music and his understanding of it. I'm not exactly sure where he got that from. My grandma, his mum, was a ballet dancer, had her own dancing school
Cool.
in Nottingham. So there was obviously a lot of music there. And was it Aunt Luigi who played the piano? And so there was clearly kind of music there. But my dad was, really into electric guitar players. So we were brought up on the kind of Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, early Clapton, Rory Gallagher, Johnny Winter, the whole list of them. So that's what I heard the most of. But my dad's favourite music was the Bach cello suites. So it was, and a lot of jazz. I was one of the reasons my name is Joe is after Joe Pass, the phenomenal guitar player. Who I absolutely love. And so I was brought up on a massive range of music right from the word go. My mother is a fantastic artist, and I think all of those things go together. It's about the way that you look at art and what the purpose of it is. So I was very lucky to be brought up in that kind of that house. And of course, my big brother Ben is a fantastic guitar player, and he was already playing. I think the first time we did a gig was busking the bus queues at Cambridge Folk Festival when I was playing, saucepans and hitting saucepans, and he was singing the blues. He used to do. He was amazing because at like 9 years old, he did a fantastic Dave Van Ronk impression with the really gravelly voice, and we never made so much money as on those bus queues. I'm telling you. So
I can believe it.
yeah. So I think that in a nutshell is it. But we went to quite a few festivals when I was very small, and someone said to my dad, "You should go to this reunion festival for Fairport Convention, this folk band." And my dad said, "You gotta be kidding me. I'm not going to a folk." I said, no, there's this guitar player, Richard Thompson. This is just someone chatting at another festival, folk guitar player, Richard Thompson, and he's brilliant. You've got to go and see him. And Dad was like, you've got to, what, there's nothing I'm least interested in music. And less interested in music, I know. But then they kind of sold us on the fact that it was a really good family festival and that it'd be really nice. And it was at Broughton Castle that year, 1981, bizarrely. And we did go, and lo and behold, they were great. The festival was great. Richard Thompson was mind-blowing. And I saw Dave Swarbrick playing the fiddle, and like so many people, such a common story, isn't it? But like so many people, I saw him and I was absolutely knocked out. Somebody recently sent me the films of that gig. I can now pinpoint the moment that I decided to be a fiddle player. You can actually see it on film. It's amazing. And I loved those albums that Swarb made at the time, the Smitty Bird and Flitting. I didn't really know which bits were Fairport Convention, which bits were Swarb at the time. I just loved loads of different things of it. And I didn't know, I didn't really have any idea where that sat in folk music, of course, being 5 years old. And I just thought that was folk music and folk tunes. And I've had to sort of reverse learn what kind of is more traditional folk music. Yeah. But it's always that's a kind of very long answer to the question about how it started, though, isn't it? But I think that's it. I think that's covered it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think actually I relate to that a lot because I think, like you, I didn't come from like a folky family who went to folk festivals or anything like that. And I got into folk music just from hearing, folk rock and more sort of, I guess, well-known bands from the scene rather than traditional sort of source material. So like you, I think, Dan, my background too is very similar.
Yeah, that's why neither of us are any good at playing folk music.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Basically. But it's interesting because I didn't realise that your dad actually sort of had a almost an antithesis to the folk scene before, at the beginning. I didn't sort of realize that he actually had a kind of hostility to it, if that's the right word. Because I suppose I obviously know that you and Ben played together on the folk scene from a very young age, so I suppose it comes as quite a surprise, perhaps, that your parents had little to do with that in a way, although I suppose they did take you to the festival, obviously, but it wasn't from their enthusiasm for the scene at all.
Yeah, yeah. My dad's theory was that the reason I really got into folk music, is growing up in the 80s, was because like the pop music of the day was so dreadful in the 1980s that it was a way of actually having some real music that was around at the time. So there might be something in that,
Did he grow to like it, as a matter of interest?
That's a very good question.
From introducing you to it.
Certain bits of it, I think, particularly like your Richard Thompsons and things, would never be against any kind of music. That was a really good, again, he said a lot of things to me that stick in my head. And one of them is just about the fact that, folk music, it has a sort of an inherent, infectiousness, in the energy of it and how it gets to you. When you hear somebody hear a kind of a ripping, fiddle tune or something, there's some way it gets into you and the energy of it, which is quite different to some music, I think. So I think he really kind of appreciated that and looked at look for all the good in those different things in music. But I mean, I think if you asked him or you asked me, if you had to pick one style of music that you had to listen to for the rest of your life, I probably wouldn't be folk music. Still to this day, I love it and I love lots of different kinds of music, but well, they all have their role to play, don't they? But I couldn't stick to one style and just say that's it. It'd be folky through and through. Now I've discovered it.
Completely, and I totally agree. And I think I totally agree with you on the inherent infectiousness point. I think that might even be the exact words I used to Paloma in my interview. But I think I also share your need to get away from it sometimes as well. And I'll ask you a bit more about that later. But I suppose sticking with the sort of early years and the influential people, obviously your big brother is a massive one and still is. Yeah. What I'm curious about, though, is that I know from an early age you learned a whole load of different stuff. So I know that you learned, obviously, the circus era and all of that. And I believe you were/are a poet as well. There was that side of things as well. So I suppose what I'm curious about is, did you consciously choose being a musician over all of that stuff because it was the thing you liked best? Or was it that your aptitude for it was greater than any of the other things? Or was it just that you sort of fell into it? I know you sometimes joke on stage that you're the only person who chose folk music because it was the stable living. I mean, how much truth is there in that joke?
Good question. I was just obsessed with learning things when I was little. I think what I really liked was learning things and achieving things, and it was great that I had a really encouraging family who were always really impressed when I kind of learned something. So rather than any of the individual learning, like circus things and juggling and unicycling and what, I don't know whether I was in love with juggling. I think I was probably in love with impressing my parents like everybody else. That was probably and I was so encouraged, so enthusiastic that I loved to do things like that. And the poetry thing was just, I had an incredible English teacher called Mr. Yates, Cliff Yates, who is a spectacular poet. You should look him up, Cliff Yates. He's absolutely brilliant, and he was just like really funny and really inspiring. And he just gave us exercises and things to do to write poems. And half of his classes won poetry competitions and were published and stuff. So I think it's really down to the fact that he was so brilliant. The way that I got into that, and again, it interested me a lot. So there were like lots of different skills there. And as for the kind of choice, I suppose I just find music to be the most meaningful of the things. I don't know if I've got the patience to be a sort of poet all the time, but I liked poetry, actually. To be honest, I really liked poetry through my teenage years. It's a brilliant way of sorting things out and sorting your thoughts out. And there's a good bit of therapy, putting things and thinking about things from different examples, and should probably just keep doing it. I think it's good for my mental health.
Yeah.
Not that I think it was called mental health in those days. I don't know. I don't think mental health had been in sort of invented at that point. But anyway, whatever you call it, I think it made me kind of just generally made me feel good, which is why I did it a lot. But and in terms of between like circusing and music, I don't know. I just found music to be more kind of more meaningful, and it's the thing that moved me the most. And I loved the challenges of doing circus things, but also, gosh, a lot of effort. You know what I mean? Getting out in the heat, getting on a 6-foot unicycle and juggling fire in the heat in the street, But that is the funny thing, though. That is where I learnt basically all of my stagecraft. I mean, you can't, I sometimes think that'd be a brilliant thing to do, when we're training up music students and things. You just say, basically, go out on the street, get a crowd, hold the crowd there, and you just watch when somebody has the choice to just walk off.
Yeah.
Just learn to try and keep people's attention. And I think in a way it's a good thing, but in a way it's something that I should probably grow out of as well, because all my shows are designed around the people who've got short attention span.
Yeah.
Which can be quite good in a sort of big late festival spot thing, but I think sometimes, we've had it and people say, yeah, you could just play like a couple of slow ones or just let us sit in and enjoy it a bit. You don't have to keep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I kind of terrorise an audience a little bit because I think they're going to get bored and walk off.
And your band members.
Yeah, and band members. Yeah, I know.
No. I know what you mean. I do relate to that in a strange kind of way, because I was telling Paloma about the playing in the somewhat colourful pubs of the Northeast, where again you were dealing with people who had the choice to walk away or or throw things, and there is a stagecraft that comes with that you can't possibly get from just playing to the converted all the time. So no, I completely understand that. I suppose coming back to your dad, one thing I did wonder is, of course, you're probably, and I hope you take this as a compliment, you're probably almost as well known for your workshop leading and your work kind of with other people like the Conservatoire Folk Ensemble and all the pieces you've written for tens of thousands of young musicians and all that sort of stuff. And coming back to your dad, I gather that he worked with quite a lot of disadvantaged young people, and you've done that as well. The project in Bradford, which I think was just before I joined the band. And I just wondered if he was a direct influence on that side of your output as well.
Yeah, it's one of the things that interests me the most. And again, it's just the way that I was brought up. I mean, my dad worked with very troubled teenagers. Well, a lot of other things, but he was really instrumental in designing ways of working with really, really troubled young people, either behavioural problems or drug problems or whatever. And very, very early on, I think he was one of the very first people to do things like, instead of putting people in prison, we'll take them on holiday to France, and things like that, and getting things that we're so used to now, like getting people to write their own reports about themselves. There's a lot of things that were very, very controversial, is my understanding of it at the time. So he did absolutely incredible work, and it was and my mother too. She dedicated her life to working with people. She had a very big job with Women's Aid, as well as inventing an activities project in Liverpool, which was taking entertainment for elderly people in residential care, and taking them out and getting a minibus and taking them down the pub and things. All things which you will have heard of millions of people doing now, but they were both very influential and forward thinking in those things, which of course I'm very proud of. So I was brought up in that kind of environment where a lot of it was about understanding group dynamics. And understanding people. So I think I don't really approach actually any group of people differently at all. So whether they're young, old, whether they're really experienced musicians, whether they're just beginners, whether it's a class of school kids, whether it's a class of school teachers, whether it's whether they're people who live in a poor area or whatever. It's the interesting thing is that everybody needs In the way I don't look at it different, I'm not saying the workshops turn out the same, but
Yeah,
it's
I
the same
understand. Yeah.
process for me of standing with a group of people and trying to suss out what they need and what they'll get on board with and how to talk to them in order to get them fired up about what we're doing. So yes, I've done lots of projects with hundreds and thousands, in fact, of people of all ages and from all sorts of backgrounds, and I think it's the crucial thing for me is working on the ability to read that group of people and work out what they need, and finding positive and non-destructive ways to get them to do what you want, even if it's a bit challenging and they don't necessarily want to immediately. And I basically just throw as much energy and enthusiasm and positivity at something as possible. But I've never I mean, we've done workshops in places where you have to be kind of locked into the classrooms, because otherwise you get kind of disturbed, where there has to be police in the school to deal with things with that all. But I've never, in my memory, I've never fallen out with somebody in a group, and I've always managed to keep them included and in there, and that's something that really interests me. And again, it's why I have a folk ensemble that has, even over the last year in lockdown, we had to work online, and I've still got 73 people, and keeping them going and just generally keeping them sort of entertained. I think that's general gist of it. I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, that is.
No, I think that's really good, and I think I don't know about you, but in my experience, some of the more troubled people are often the most responsive, actually, because I think it perhaps means more to them, I guess, because of what they might have been through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't. It's just everyone's got their take on it. I just even like look at people and go, "Oh yeah, well you need to," I don't want to offend anybody, but this one of the things that I find really interesting, but also kind of annoys me, is when you get prepped for groups of people and say, "Oh well, watch out for him because he never pays attention."
Yeah.
And he's got to do, and he'll talk all the way through it. And you've got to think, and what because I've taught groups of school teachers who are by far the most annoying. Can't pay attention and will do things whatever.
Me too, yeah.
And so nothing against, like, I'm a big fan, but of teachers in general. But I'm just saying, you don't need to tell me, because I'll need to deal with it, and you just kind of label them as something to start with, and we'll have to do it. I do realise that if you to give an example, I'm sure she won't mind, but to give an example, I mean, we had a fantastic student in one of our summer courses who was quite severely autistic and blind and almost completely deaf, and she was incredible.
Amazing,
incredible.
Yeah.
What she could do. The problem was in the group, to be fair, that even though we'd been warned about all these difficulties, we just say, well, we'll just see what happens. The problems that we came across was that she was just way too quick for the rest of the group. She was
amazing, yeah.
So essentially speaking, that was what made it really difficult from that perspective. It was something to deal with. So I mean, it's not that I don't think people are challenging. It's that basically everyone's kind of challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, just in different ways.
I totally understand. I remember once playing in a special educational needs school, and I had to get the kids to shut the teachers up who were sat round the outside talking. And I remember once as well doing a gig in a secure unit, and when we got to reception, they said, "Do you want a panic alarm?" Do we need one? Or but it turned out all fine. So I guess perhaps the next stage chronologically, if we're working that way, presumably is going to the conservatoire. So you went to study at the conservatoire, and obviously that involvement has lasted to this day. And I suppose my first question really is, how was the conservatoire different in would it have been the 90s you first went there?
So 1994, I went to study at the conservatoire. I was just looking for somewhere to go, and the places that looked like they did interesting things to me. So, and by that I mean not just Western classical music. I mean, you got to think it was a massively different time in terms of what courses were offered. In fact, I could only find people who looked like they were doing interesting things was at the conservatoire, so Birmingham Conservatoire, and at Dartington, where I knew that John Remborn was doing some teaching at the time, and I just bumped into him. I was playing at Fylde Festival with Ben before that, and I went up to him. He was playing with, I think he was playing with Isaac Guillory, just as a we were on the same bill, which we definitely didn't deserve. But anyway, we were on the same bill, and I just went up to him. I said, "I heard you do some things at Dartington." He said, "Oh, just come over. Here's my phone number. Just ring me up. I'll show you around."
Yeah, that sounds like John. Yeah.
So it was brilliant. Yeah. He did. Again, he showed me around, and it was really interesting. But it was a long way away, from where I grew up in Chester, so that was a long way from there. But and then Birmingham, I wrote just saying what I did. I wrote to the then head of creative studies. So it was amazing. They had a department called Creative Studies, who's Professor Andrew Downs. And little did I know when I was writing that letter to him how much that would change my life. Because he just rang me up.
Right.
There weren't for the younger people watching. There were no emails then.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
I proper wrote. Not even have a printer, didn't have a PC. I just wrote it in hand. You know what I mean? Actually, hand wrote a letter. Them were the days. Gosh,
handwriting. What's that? Is that?
Yeah, I know. That thing that. Yeah. Anyway, I was gonna say it's that thing that nobody can do anymore. But I mean, if you see my handwriting, that'd be unfair. So and he just rang me up and he said, "Right, what are you doing tomorrow? Come over and see me." And I was like, "Okay, I want to hear you play, and it sounds really interesting." So I got the train to Birmingham, and I was sort of 17-year-old, and just went up, and so I played him some tunes, and he said, "Wait there a minute," and he went and got Stephen Dorr, who I think was like the head of what do you call it? My mind's gone blank. Like old music, not medieval music. What am I talking about?
Renaissance, Baroque.
No,
how far back are we going?
Well, I'm just, when you do it authentically of the time. Anyway, my mind's gone completely blank. Anyway, we have people writing in. Call himself a professor. No, I don't call myself a professor. But anyway, I should know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, he went to get him, and he played for him, and then he went and got someone else, and I ended up just playing to half the staff on that floor at Conservatoire that day.
Fantastic.
And he said, "This is great. We don't actually teach anything to do with this here. Do you ever write any music?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, and I really like some music, and here's some tunes that I've written, and I can send you something because I'd done a portfolio for A-level and that sort of thing." And he said, "Great, well, just come as a composer and I'll get you a fiddle teacher and be brilliant." And so I did. And that was it. I had a few very happy years there. And it was just a phenomenally forward-thinking place at that time in terms of everything. You could do gospel choir and samba band and gamelan, and everybody when they went there to study classical music were forced to do. It was compulsory to do modules in so-called world music. It was called world music at the time. And so that everyone had a really good view on music from everywhere and had a great perspective on music, and I just found that to be absolutely phenomenal. And then I left, and I left after 3 years because I got a job in the Albion band, so I left kind of.
I was coming to that next, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. We'll come to that then, but I left, and then just a couple of months later, I just get this contract in the post about running the folk music course there. Elective thing for anybody that wanted to do it, and I was like, I remember discussing this with anybody, so I rang up Andrew, and he said, "Didn't I mention it?" He was like, "No," he said, "I didn't mention it. How do you fancy come for a couple of hours a week, and you can run the folk thing?" And I was like, "Okay, great." And that was the start of it. It was not. That was the start. That was the start of that.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that was quite such a kind of. Yeah, how much that was sprung on you, I suppose. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't. The year before me, there was quite a good folk ensemble. It was always not fantastic when I was. I think it was like a few people, and it was not as fantastic. It probably was fantastic, but just not my cup of tea. Very traditional, and a few people playing. They were pretty good actually. I don't know why I'm saying that, but it was just kind of a completely different thing to what it is now. Yeah. And then the year leading up to me doing it was a man called Frank Moon, who UFQ people should be familiar with, and Frank, and he led the band for a year, and seemed to be pretty good, and going when he got a few people into it and all the rest of it, and then so I don't know what happened, whether he didn't want to carry on with it or what maybe he was doing as a student, because he probably would have still been a student because he was the same year as me, but I left a bit earlier than I was planning to just because of the Albion job.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I'll obviously come back to Frank. What's the term you were searching for before? Head of early music.
Early music, that's it.
Is
Early
that all it was?
music. Oh, blimey. Sorry, early music. I know, it just literally went out of my head. Early music.
Yeah.
Call it early music. That's another term that doesn't make much sense, is it? But
Yeah.
things like early music and world music, and as opposed to what late music, and it's got to be early in or something else, hasn't it? I mean, what we talk about as being early music could be much later
Yeah.
than most music that's ever been made in the history of time, and world
Yes.
music as opposed to all the music that doesn't happen on the world that we study. And I don't know who thinks of all these things. Anyway, never mind.
So yeah, the Albion band, and I should say at this point that that was my first time of coming across you. So I was very into folk by the time I went to the Albion band. I really got into that, and I was about 12 or something. Sorry, Joe. And my mum saw it advertised in the Stafford Gatehouse brochure, and I'd never heard of the band, but we went to see the Albion band, and I confess I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, but I was knocked out by your playing. It was remarkable. And I think obviously that led to us collaborating many years later. But I suppose, yeah, the obvious question is, how did the Albion band thing come about? Because presumably if you were a student at the conservatoire, I'm quite curious as to, I don't know the full story as to how Ashley Hutchings ever sort of I presume it was him that came across you and invited you to join. I mean, how did that all
Well,
come about?
at the time, the band they'd gone to the acoustic lineup, and it was Ashley, Chris Weil, Julie Matthews, Chris Leslie,
Yeah.
and so they were doing their acoustic 4-piece thing, and I think they were happy with that. But basically, Fairport poached Chris Leslie, invited him to join. I think was that after Martin Alcock left. I think that's probably the way that happened. Anyway, but Chris Leslie knew me from many years before, in about 1990 or something, a little bit after that maybe. Me and Ben were playing at a festival where Whippersnapper were, and we saw the great and amazing and my big heroes, Whippersnapper, Kevin Dempsey, Martin Jenkins, Chris Leslie, and Dave Swarbrick, of course, and we got chatting, and we ended up playing for them, and Chris and Kev Dempsey, of course, who's a good friend of mine these days, were I think they were sort of quite impressed and had remembered us. So Chris Leslie knew of me, and also Chris and Julie, I think, had seen us playing at a folk club or something. I think they'd kind of seen me. I think it was probably their suggestion more than anything else for Ashley to kind of to find me. And I got a phone call one day saying, this is Ashley Hutchings of the Albion band, and then he went on to start explaining who he was, and I was like, no, I know who you are. And he invited me over to Stockport to play for him and to be auditioned, I guess, and just to meet him. But I know through Chris and Julia, I mean, he knew what I did anyway, I think. But so I would have been 19, 20 at that time. 20, I must have been 20, I suppose. I can't remember how quickly it all happened. And I went over to his house in Stockport, and he cooked Christmas cake and Wensleydale cheese, which I didn't know then. He's just fantastic. He eats like a kid. It's absolutely brilliant. Never know. He's like, he eats what like a 7-year-old or something. Anyway, so he did. So it was great. So I had that, which was a bit weird. This man eats cheese cake. I kind of like, what's going on here? But of course, it was like a couple of days later. He said, it was like a Wednesday. So he said, come over on Friday. So, I mean, what did I do on Thursday? I mean, Thursday I did what any sensible person would do. And I just listened to any Albion band albums that I could find. I just went through and kind of listened to them or whatever, and had a couple of fiddle licks of Chris Leslie's and whatever, made sure I had them down. And, it's traditional, and it's what you have to do. So I went on. So then it was. So I went on Friday, and he said, "Will you play something?" And I played I played something really slow, actually. I don't think I wanted to prove that I could play something tasteful because I never did it on stage, really. So I played something slow. And then he was asking me about how I got into it, and I was playing bits of Orange Blossom and Mason's Apron and stuff and telling the story how, in fact, he was so up for that in the first tour, he got me to do that on stage. He said, just tell the story about how you learned and played the tunes like you did at my house that day. So that's I ended up doing that as a thing. And then he played me some bits from I think the album was Demi Paradise, Albion Band album, and kind of said these are the sort of things that we've been doing at the moment, so you need to play some of these fiddle parts. At which point, of course, I just played him all the fiddle parts back to him, of course, because I'd heard it all the day before. And so he said, right, that's it, you've got the job. And it was a bit weird because we did one tour and then Chris and Julie left. I don't think it was related. I don't know. I don't think it was to do with me, but I don't know. And then we had to get a whole other lineup together. And then I requested that we got Kelly Wilde into the band. Because I'd known her because we were sort of 14-year-olds together on the festival site, and she was always absolutely unbelievable.
Incredible singer,
yeah. Chris's daughter, so it kind of tied in nicely. So that was what I wanted to do. So that's how it came about.
Yes, I mean, when you look back on the Albion Band era, because I know, because one album particularly always was a kind of big, those albums where as a teenager, I suppose they really sort of stick with you forever because they have such an impact on you. And one of mine was An Evening with the Albion Band, which I think was from almost near the end of the band. Must have been 2001, 2, I think. Yeah. And I absolutely love that album. But I know from speaking to you about it that you edited that album, and quite a few of the arrangements and stuff you had quite a heavy input in. So I suppose what I'm interested in is, did your influence in the band grow as it went along, or were you almost given quite a lot of license to do that from the outset? Because I suppose Ashley has this reputation as the governor and all that. So I mean, it's interesting. Was he? Yeah, how did was your influence allowed to grow, or was it there from the off?
That's a good question, really. I mean, it's always in the Albion Band, it was always a case of throwing material in. And I think Ashley would always kind of have the final say on things. But I mean, there's nothing like a sort of a dictator or a whatever. You know what I mean? It's just nothing. It's nothing like that. I mean, it's just like being together in a group of people and throwing things in. And obviously, I think Ashley would have the final say on things, and I think that's fair enough. But if you look at the range of material, I think over the years of the Albion Band, because it's always just a sum of whoever's in the band. So I think it's always kind of like that. But, I'm really pushy and really like a control freak, and I'm sure as you know. But I'm sure that I'm sure I drove Ashley mad. I mean, he could probably just, like thinking that I knew best about everything, and which of course I didn't. So and still don't, but I kind of I get very. I'm not really, but I do get very enthusiastic about the way the vision that I have for something, and I find it very hard to veer off that. But I mean, I've learned to trust the people I have around me now, believe it or not, Dan. So
I do. No, I'm only jesting, of course.
Yeah. But at that time, it's kind of tricky because it's with the Albions, because I mean, what is it? Do you know what I mean? Some of my favourite things we did in the Albions don't really make sense as Albion Band tracks if you think about the Albion Band. So, I suppose I was just interested in making what I thought was the best music that we could make together, but I don't know how that works for kind of fans of a band that constantly changes and is. I mean, whether we should have been playing a Bulgarian tune and a blues rock song and a kind of whatever in an English sort of traditional. I don't. There's something called the Albion Band. Don't know about any of that, but yeah, I think he actually got to know some of my skills over the years, and the fact that I could get that album together and just do a version of it from that live stuff was really good. I'm glad you liked that album. It wasn't easy to make. We recorded 3 nights and Kelly lost her voice.
Right.
In the recording, so it was really difficult to get enough. Given that she's a really lead thing in the band. And of course, it was the time when Ken had left the band and Pete Zorn came in, the fantastic late great
incredible musician.
Absolutely honour to work with, as well as Ken. Ken's a phenomenal musician. Anyway, so they it's sort of half and half. So you get different things, happening on it. To be honest, I can't really remember exactly what's on it, but that's my vague memory of that album anyway.
I could reel it off track by track, but I won't bother. I know what you mean. I think it appealed to me, actually, with my mentality behind it, because it was quite a mishmash. There's no doubt about that. There were things like the Landslide and Three Shepherds, and very kind of fiddle heavy, tune sets, I suppose you'd call them. And then you had things like I'm a Poor Dressmaker and much more trad like things. And it was a bit of a mix, but I think that appealed to me. And actually, I remember my first album, Tomorrow's Still to Come, which I recorded in 2009, was I just threw it all in there. And I think I learned over the years to perhaps be a little more coherent with my albums, hopefully. But
we'll become mature one day, Dan. We'll make an
absolutely
at some point.
But I certainly loved that mentality of chuck it all in there, do it all. And I suppose I liked the fireworks of particularly you, I have to say, in your pajamas, as I recall.
Well, they weren't actually pajamas, but yeah, I had a certain style at that time. Yeah,
style's one word for it. Yeah, but I think the sort of the very much the fireworks and the showmanship was something that really appealed to me, because I'd watched some folk acts that lacked that very much. And I suppose that leads me to ask, is that something that you alluded to it earlier about the sort of stagecraft from the circus days and how you're very kind of intensive and energetic in your shows, but do you feel that musically as well, that whatever projects you make, do you feel that that's an important part of it, to have that kind of, sort of virtuosity and showmanship in there? Or is it just a case of doing whatever's right for the project?
I love really exciting music. Yeah. And something that you've afforded me the opportunity to set the record straight on. Something that sort of does brass me off a bit is if somebody plays something really virtuosic, if something is really fast or something is really detailed or something is whatever, it's the notion that they're doing that to show off is makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
Yes,
I put a lot of effort into trying to play things because I want to excite I want to give them something which is kind of a raw energy of something that gets them really excited. It's like, whoa, and you can really psych an audience by doing that. And it takes an awful lot of work to be able to do that and get people really excited and play something that has that kind of fire in it. I'm not doing that anymore to show off what I can do than I am, because there's things that are way more difficult for me. It took me years to get a really nice vibrato together and stuff. I mean, I don't want to play a long note with really nice vibrato. People go, gosh, just showing off. But I mean, that is showing off. I can really show off to a violin player in the audience by playing a really, really long, beautiful note with really nice vibrato that seems to go on forever in one bow because of my control. That is actually, you could say that's showing off more than other things. So it's kind of, I think a show has to have impact, and it has to communicate something, and it has to make an audience feel something beyond what is happening in the lights and the smoke machines and the fact that you're sat in a big crowd, but to really, get an audience excited. As I've experienced seeing Jeff Beck live, seeing Stevie Wonder, seeing, like really phenomenal artists that have unique and incredible talents, and I don't sit there going, it's just showing off a bit. Do you know what I mean?
I completely know what you mean. I really do, and I relate to it a lot, because I guess I would consider my main asset to be, fast and furious tune playing and things, and I've had the same comments. So the Albion band ended in 2002, if I got that right.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, UFQ was formed in 2009. So I suppose my next question, in terms of your output, and I do want to get to the folk ensemble, because obviously that is a massive part of what you've done, and we have touched on it already. But in terms of your performing output, what happened between the Albion band and UFQ? What were the main things that were involved there? I must confess, I was chatting to Tom, and he mentioned the Bright Size Gypsies. This was a pre-UFQ band. Which I don't know, but Tom said to me, I know you're interviewing Joe tomorrow. Please ask him about that.
Yeah. Well, just to say, I mean, one of the major things I did in time was playing with Kev Dempsey.
Yes,
I was always good through the years playing with Big Brother Ben. But this partnership with Kev, I mean, we made a few different albums, and I think that went from about. Was it 99? I can't remember what year the first album was, but I mean, we made Every Other World. Then we made, I think 2004 was Freehand that we made. Right. The first album we made together took 9 days, and the second one took 4 years, and the next one took 13 years. So we kind of, we were.
So it's quite a prolific duo.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And and then we made Off by Heart, which is the most
I love
recent
that.
one. So that was
Great
brilliant.
record.
So we did a lot of touring all around, America and lots of different places. So that overlapped when I was doing that, because that was the time when I famously went around the world the wrong way, because I was playing in Hong Kong then, but I started off in Chicago with Kev, and I could have just gone the other way around the world, which someone told me when I arrived. But anyway, took me
Oh,
like
right.
but anyway,
Pre-Google era,
yeah, long story for another day.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, but also two things. Bright Side Gypsies is a sort of predecessor to UFQ, because Frank and Tom played with myself. We got with in that band, and we it was run by a crazy man called Sci-Fi Simon. Don't think that's his real name, Sci-Fi Simon.
Yeah.
Or Ad Simon is absolutely brilliant. Still working today. Fantastic songwriter and a brilliant, brilliant sort of creative mind. And he was really into the kind of gypsy jazz things. And I'm not a gypsy jazz kind of player, but I can blag my way through a bit of fiddle. Stuff on that. So I did that. So we did that, and that was great. But I also had a group called the Fiddle Quintet, which I basically put together so that I could spend time with Paloma. Before we were together, and that was 5 fiddle players, and including the great Joe Hamilton, phenomenal singer.
Oh, yes.
And actually was at Conservatoire studying viola, which a lot of people don't know because she's just such an amazing singer. So we did that, the 5 of us, but also I played in a band called Famous Last Words, which was Keith Hancock's band, the melodian player, which also had Joe Hamilton in it. I'm a big fan. Joe Hamilton, Nancy Burgess playing sax and cello, and myself and Keith and Ben, big brother Ben, playing bass and guitar and singing. So it was, and we had a drummer at one point, very briefly, Roy Martin, who's a fantastic drummer, played with Aretha Franklin, and that he was probably a bit out of our league, but it was great. So quite a lot of things, and me and Ben did some like publishing work for writing country songs. And we there was a band called the High Rollers that we did some films and stuff with, and made an album with, which I can't remember what it was called. So there's plenty going on, really.
Wow, yeah, I was just going to say, I'll be honest, I didn't realise you'd done quite so much in that time. I've heard less of that era, I suppose.
Yeah, it might be then. I might be getting the dates wrong. Some of that might have happened earlier. I can't remember exactly. It's all a bit of a blur.
Indeed. But then, of course, we do come to UFQ. And I suppose, well, presumably in order to have formed UFQ, you must have met Tom Chapman, because I gather that part of the reason for forming the band was to play with Tom Chapman. So am I right in thinking that you met Tom because he came to Folk Ensemble? Is that right? Yeah,
Tom and Paloma, they both came into Folk Ensemble as students at the Conservatoire, and that's how I met them. Both. And Tom, for his first year, he came sort of brought a bongo and sat and played it before anyone knew what a cajon was. Well, not anybody. I think the Peruvians have known a bit longer than that.
Indeed, yes.
But
they've known for some time, yes.
Exactly. And then in his second year, I think his girlfriend bought him his girlfriend at the time bought him a cajon for his birthday, and he turned up with this box. He was like, what are you doing? What's that? And he really took to it, and he's been in the folk ensemble ever since. I mean, he's been this phenomenal, absolute. He's a genius percussion. And we work really well together. And I really wanted to do something with him, but I also wanted to do the band. We didn't quite get Fiddle Quintet off the ground, so I really wanted a band with Paloma. And we were together as a couple by then, and we're living together. And like, what should we do? Let's get a band. Let's do and actually have a band together. Right, Tom's definitely in.
Yeah,
and then we had a bit of and then the 3 of us sat and thinking, who is that 4th member? And because we'd just done the Bright Side Gypsy stuff, and I remembered Frank from being a student writing things that were really creative and outlandish, I absolutely loved. He's one of the people that stuck in my head. That's what we thought we'd do. We get together, and we got together. The first time we got together was like sit down and play some folk tunes, and Frank's playing all these like folk guitar licks, I'm just like, Frank, you don't have to do that, Frank. Just play how you normally play. Just play how you normally play. He's like, right.
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's kind of it, really. We and bizarrely, the idea for UFQ was that we'd try and play it a bit straighter than we had done in other projects, so that we could play to a decent sized audience and make a living and do plenty of gigging and plenty of work and not make it too outlandish.
How's that gone?
Well, of course, it's a completely flawed concept because you are the musicians that you are, and with
Yeah,
every
absolutely.
note decision, with every chord change, with every riff, you can't block off what creatively you like the sound of and whatever in order to make it something that somebody else would like. It just doesn't work. So we things just have got more outlandish as they've gone on, as you well know.
Oh yes, yes indeed. Well, we've done an awful lot of talking about you and the fiddle. John, play some fiddle.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, I have to confess, I completely forgot that anybody was going to say this. But this is what I've been doing. This is what I like to do.
Yeah, never happens in interviews, does it?
Well, not really. I don't know. I mean, just have my bows reheard, which is great. Except that I don't really work stuff. Does that? That's all right. Well, I do.
Sounds like you. Yeah.
I'll just need to change my strings. It's terrible, this whole lockdown thing. I haven't changed.
Oh,
No gigging. You don't want to change violin strings when you don't have to. Do you know what I mean? They're sort of.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
I'll just put a bit of rosin on there. I'm going. This is a tune that I'm about to compose called the day that I was interviewed by Dan on a very hot day. I just think it's not very cheery. And throw in a major chord. How about that?
Lovely.
It's a bit more Dan. Maybe talk about folk music all that time. That's not. Hang on a minute.
Stevie Wonder.
It's too hot for playing. That'll do, won't it? There you go.
That's good. That's nice. I was tempted then just to name a load of obscure artists and see what you played, actually.
Yeah, well, we could do, but I mean, the interview would be about 4 hours long, so we.
That's true. Yeah. No, seriously, it's always great to hear you play. So I guess I would love to obviously ask you about the folk ensemble, because it has grown quite literally, both in terms of the size of the band and the impact that it's had. And I suppose maybe one of the things that I think quite a few people don't necessarily pick up on is how many top flight musicians have actually come through that band. I think they watch it and think, isn't it fantastic to see 60 or 70 young people jump up and down playing folk and taking the roof off a chai walla tent. But I mean, there's some seriously stellar names have come through that band. I mean, obviously Tom and Paloma for a start, but I mean, plenty of others as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I'm very proud of. Obviously, it's not even really particularly the big stars. It's the people who are actually making their careers and offering something to like festivals and being really good, really entertaining bands that have made that really part of their careers and part of their profession is going around kind of cheering people up. I mean, I can't underline it enough that is for me, that's what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of entertaining people and cheering people up. And we need as many sort of happy, well-adjusted people who have really good emotional experiences as we can get in this country and this world, if I can be so dramatic. And that is the whole point of being a musician. You know, it's not about anything to do with showing what you can do. It's about the experience those people have, which is why I don't like overblown stars who really aren't that entertaining, but people get a kick out of seeing them because they're so famous, because it's not really doing anything for people
Yeah.
on an emotional level. So whether that is listening to a piece of music that's really unbelievably miserable that you can relate to, that helps you understand the human existence a little bit more, or whether it's something that's just so uplifting and makes you so excited and so happy it takes you out of your own life for a little bit, that is the really important thing. So the more people who are training to do that and do it well, and which I think the folk ensemble does, not necessarily because of what I do, but because of what the experiences afford people. That they learn, have a bit of experience learning those things. I think the more people that we're sending out to do that, the better, basically. Yeah. So I'm very proud of that.
Would you say that mantra runs through your work with music for youth and we've done workshops in schools, and obviously you teach at Chester University as well, don't you? I mean, is that a mentality that goes through everything you do besides just the folk ensemble?
Yes, I think music is unbelievably important, and people don't realise how crucial it is to your existence as a human being. In fact, there would actually be no human race without music, and people don't really understand what I mean when I say that. But I mean, it's our very fundamental and early ways of communicating, which led us to be able to do things like building shelter and hunting and all kinds of things. And from those very early days of the human race to the present day, it's a way that we have of understanding the very strange existence that we have, and sharing things and being able to communicate with each other on a really deep level, and we can express things in music that cannot be expressed in words. Basically, if my girlfriend just left me and I'm really pissed off about it, I can just tell you that piece of information and you'll know that piece of information. However, if I can write you a piece of music or sing you a song that makes you feel the way I feel about it, you have a much better understanding of what I'm going through, and thus your own experience in life. So, without getting too deep into the philosophy of it, it's not when we say that music is massively important for everybody, it's not just like, because we need a bit of light relief, and everyone likes to go to a gig, or everyone loves to watch a YouTube film, and that's that. It goes far deeper into that. Absolutely. And the lack of that in our education system, and our lack of understanding of that amongst people, is a direct feeder for many of the problems that we see in society and many of the mental health issues, etc., etc. I could go on and on and on and on.
No, I
when
totally
I talk
agree.
about turning out for a folk ensemble rehearsal with 70, 80, 90, 100 people for a couple of hours every week, or turning up to do a gig or running a workshop I've run workshops I did 2,500 primary school children and their teachers in Symphony Hall in one go one day, and I've done some really big workshops. When I step out to there, it's with that really solid and unwavering belief that it's something that is so important that we all need, that leads me to continue doing it.
I think that's beautifully put. I completely agree. Just to clarify something, Paloma hasn't actually left you, has she? Because that could make the band really awkward. No,
she's my wife. I was talking about my girlfriend. No, I'm just...
Oh, okay. Yes.
Just kidding. No, it was just an example.
Yes, no, I totally understand, and I do echo a lot of it. In fact, I'm wearing a T-shirt of live music now. I mean, that was the organisation where I did so much work in in care homes and schools and mental health units and all that sort of thing.
The problem is, though, because it's been all locked down, no one's been able to do anything since the lockdown kicked in. They've had to change their name to Dead Music Then. Like that. Because nothing's been able to happen.
No, that's it. But no, I mean, if ever you need reminding of the power of music, I think some of those settings are remarkable. And I agree with you. I intensely resent the way it's thought of as some sort of nice optional extra if there's a bit of money lying around, as opposed to an essential.
No, I think. Do you know what I think is really fun? I think a really nice, fun sort of hobby to have would be understanding things like how to measure a hypotenuse triangle. Or how to draw a soil profile diagram. I think that's quite fun. You could do that as a hobby, like on the weekend and stuff. But something that is fundamental to your actual existence as a human being, in terms of how you work, how you actually work, and how the human race exists, you need some proper, thoroughly worked on and thoroughly understood artistic subjects, because there is an entire history of artists and philosophers who have tried to fathom what it is to be a human being, and there's so much we can learn from and that we can put into action so that you can have a happy life and the people around you can have a happy life. Don't write to me, maths teachers, and tell me how creative it is and how that's really important too. I understand that, but we need to redress the balance. It's not to the detriment of those other things, and understanding who you are and where you came from and how you can be happy in your life.
Again, beautifully put. I completely agree. And yes, and I think for what it's worth, I think that does come across in all that you do. We've obviously coming sort of towards the end, I think. But before I ask you to choose a UFQ track to play.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that as well.
One little I forgot when it was.
I'm not paying attention now because I'm just thinking of one.
Yeah, I forgot when it was me as well. This might sound like a really sort of broad question, but one thing I wonder is, either in UFQ or in something else, is there a particular area of music, a genre or even a subgenre, that you're kind of dying to play, dying to experiment with, dying to incorporate into something that you do? Is there an area of music that you feel like you maybe haven't explored already that you would really love to?
Well, instinctively, I feel like there's loads. I mean, I think we need to get more opera into UFQ.
Yeah, I'll cross my legs.
I think that would be great.
So
I think I mean, there's things in my own. There's loads of things in my own playing that I'd like to be really good at that I'm not. So that's kind of one thing. And in terms of styles of music, it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's loads of music that I really like, but you kind of got to think of something that you could actually do and you could get away with using bits of. So I kind of so my answer is yes, absolutely loads, and I'm probably not going to get round to it, and it'd probably be a bad idea if I did.
Yes. Do you know what? I'd probably give the same answer myself, actually. Not about you. I mean about myself. Because there's areas I've often thought, I'd love to do that, and then just thought, or I could just listen to them do it. So I think
there are things that I play and that I love to do. If you see me on most days, let me just grab this.
Oh yeah.
I don't know whether I can get. Oh, it's gonna look neat. Oh, there you go. Because to me, things that you're not that great at, but that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to play kind of blues guitar, don't they? And it's what I was brought up on. You see, that's the thing is, I never learnt to play the guitar. The first thing I ever learnt to play on the guitar. Really, it's the first thing I did. It's like Red House on that boat. But I mean,
he wrote some great tunes, that Vivaldi, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, I can't. There's loads of things that I like to sit and play just for myself. But I mean, there's no point in me getting upstairs. Go right. Well, I've done made a blues arm, play me guitar. I mean, you just go and listen to someone else.
Yes. No. As I say, I have. Feel very similar about my own output as well.
I've got my Bach book here. There's some music
nice
to play. Beautiful. I'm not going to play you some of it because Paloma will never hear the last of it. Paloma will think I played wrong on it. But I mean, it's my favourite music. Absolutely beautiful. Mark Sinatra. So I'd love to be able to play better at that. I'd love to be able to play kind of like proper following the changes jazz, not just kind of blagging it by ear like I do. You know what I mean? I think there's so the list goes on.
Yeah. No. That makes total sense. Well, I guess yes. It's been great to find out more about. I mean, I obviously knew a fair bit already after 7 years in the band. Yeah,
God, 7 years. Yeah,
and a year of rehearsing before that, of course, as well. So we've spent a great deal of time in each other's company, either in person or on Zoom or in a car. But it's been great to find out all that stuff. But yes, to finish off, would you mind choosing a UFQ track?
I'm going to choose a piece of music called When the Weather Comes, and I'll tell you why. Because this is a piece of music that predates UFQ. It's a melody that I wrote to impress Paloma, I named it at that time. So I wrote it for the Fiddle Quintet back there, and I was trying to write a really nice kind of melody, and just set it for those kind of fiddles. And I was always really pleased with the melody. I think it's one of the strongest melodies I've ever written, actually. I think it's, and it's kind of interesting in an unassuming way, because I think it's in 7. I'm not, it's been a while since I heard it. I just want to hear it again. That's why I've requested it. But it was originally named after Paloma's favourite joke at the time, which is, what do you call a fish with no eyes? Fsh. So it was just called Fsh. That was just one of those riffs. So I wrote this tune called Fsh. So I'm kind of picking it because it's got that little bit of history to it.
Nice.
It had a second part to it. So it was always part 1 and part 2. But when we came to play at UFQ, we just ditched the second half of it because it wasn't as nice as the first half of it. And I'm also picking it because I think for people who are currently into the band, they might not have gone that far back to the first album to hear some of those tunes. So quite nice to hear one. And I think that's about it. And also, we changed the title to When the Weather Comes, and the first album was released on Fellside, and they wouldn't let us spell it with no capital letters. But that is how it's spelled, just so you know. It can't have capital letters, can it, when the weather comes? I mean, why would it have capital letters? I don't know. Well, anyway, so there you go. That's my poetic thing. So when the weather comes, and I just hope people enjoy hearing it again.
Nice. Oh, very nice. Well, thanks so much for the chat, and I'm sure we'll meet soon.
Yeah. All right. Last one down. Cheers. Great question.